Fun to see something like wild sunflower.
Okay, that's not wild sunflower, I don't think.
What do we think it is?
I think it's common sunflower.
Oh, you're right. I should have just called it common. All right, so we wanted to identify what we just found in the field, and there's a lot. Where do you want to start, Marsha?
Let's start down there with our corn plant.
All right, this is the guy that belongs here. This is our actual corn plant that we were working with earlier. But after that,
we have field bindweed.
Not very usual to see field bindweed in a field. This is more on a field edge.
This is on a field edge where when you see some of these larger weeds, that's where we found them. And you see that a lot on field edges. That's just because we don't want to get too close to the ditch, or if the neighbor's there, we want to be really careful.
Leave a buffer.
Leave a buffer strip.
Absolutely.
Good neighbors leave buffer strips.
So this was last year's crop.
Yeah, so we have a volunteer soybean. We call it a volunteer soybean. It's still a weed because the crop that we're growing this year is corn. So once again, we want all of our nutrients, all of our moisture, everything to go into that corn plant, not into last year's soybean crop. We're not double cropping this.
Now, there's sugar beets in the rotation here for this particular farm, so it's not uncommon for us to find common lamb's quarter.
No, common lamb's quarter is part of that goosefoot family. I don't really call it a troublesome weed per se, but it does cause yield lag. It could cause, if you're cutting stuff, it can cause some issues.
It's a nuisance weed, and we see it a lot in the sugar beet rotations. It's
right.
Very prevalent there.
Yep, and that's just because of chemistry.
So here, there's kind of the opposing forces, a common ragweed and a giant ragweed. They're similar, but really
different.
Very different.
So common ragweed, which we have a big issue with that, especially when it comes into edible beans. We'll see it in soybeans. A lot of the common ragweed we see in this area is also herbicide resistant to certain chemistry, which once again cause it to go out of control. Giant ragweed, we'll see that more, and you'll see that a lot in cornfields. It's normally a later season plant. It's a large seeded broadleaf. We don't tend to have the issues with it up here like you see it down south.
Exactly. Southern states, even just into South Dakota, has more of a giant ragweed problem.
Right. It's controlled with our chemistry right now.
In a way, it's a little bit fun to see something like wild sunflower.
Okay, that's not wild sunflower, I don't think.
What do we think it is?
I think it's common sunflower.
Oh, you're right. I should have just called it common. This would be unusual. I called it wild sunflower.
I think it's common sunflower. This field at one time could have been sunflowers, but this is also probably a major thoroughfare, I guess, going to like West Fargo so seeds can fly off.
I think about geese and deer dragging it around.
And your neighbor that likes to feed all the birds.
Yep, so you're gonna see that.
You'll see this quite a bit in fields that haven't had a history of sunflowers, but you'll still see common sunflowers growing.
You know, also mallow. We see more mallow when we get to the edge of a field. Usually it's not as much of a problem in the field here in this part of the world, but we do see more mallow on the field edges.
We do see more mallow. We see a lot in my yard.
That's true. Folks are going to see that as a yard weed more than anything.
So this can be an issue when you get down into those I states. What we'll see sometimes with common mallow, especially in cornfields, is it'll start binding up because it'll start kind of growing up some of those stalks.
Absolutely. Okay, this guy, we're not going to touch as well. So you did a nice job of pulling that out by the taproot. He is mean and nasty.
Yes, this is the one that if your cousins ever come to the farm and you want to tell them to go pick weeds, tell them to pick this one. They'll never pick weeds again at your farm.
Canada thistle. It's got all the little points on the edge of you can see them, there's little spikes on the edge of the leaf. It's its defense mechanism.
Yes, and that's the one thing with Canada thistle. So sugar beets in rotation, we see this quite a bit in sugar beet fields. Canada thistle, we also get that seed in bird seed as well.
Well, and it's unique because it can reproduce by seed, but also underground through a rhizome.
Right, so you can see where I broke this off here. Where I pulled this from was a whole group of them, probably off of that same root structure.
Likely so, they probably all share the same root.
Yep.
So we've had a chance to stage our corn, talk about the mud that we've been in, and identify the weeds that have been a problem. Keep following along, drop your comments below, and follow us as we grow corn. Here we grow 2024.